and welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's video, I'm going to go over the why and the book review for Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Let's go through, again, just like with other stories, I am not a scholar, I'm not an expert, I am just doing this for fun and from what my takeaways are. As always, let's start with the positives of the story. I think this story is a really great story of adventure, but also has a deep underlying message about humanity and civilization. We learn throughout the story that this is set in a time where there was a great divide amongst people, where white men thought he was a supreme ruler of Earth, and that people of other backgrounds were lesser or servants, etc., etc. The main character of Marlowe is a radical thinker for this time period, and the fact that throughout the journey he changes his thoughts and beliefs that all men are equal, and that customs of the white man would look strange to the customs of the black man and vice versa. So in that regards, the story is really well told. I do love the ideas and themes and explorations that Joseph Conrad touches on, and for the time that this story was written, I think it's really progressive in its patterns of thought. So I commend him for that aspect of the story. I also really do love a good adventure story, and I do love the details that Conrad puts into the story and as he's describing it. It's really kind of cool to hear his description of things. That's where the positive ends. Let's go with the negatives of the story. One of the biggest negatives that I have against this story is, oh my god, Joseph Conrad just talks forever. So there's multiple times in the story where he just talks and talks and talks. He loves to have a lot of very philosophical conversations in his head or as he narrates, and sometimes he does this and forgets to tell us what's going on in the story, and sometimes he'll just jump back really quickly to like what's going on action-wise, so it's really hard to read. I know there are several points in this book where I had to reread certain paragraphs like multiple times, primarily because I couldn't tell if he was talking about the actions or if he was talking about his philosophical thoughts and ideas. So for a lot of readers, you have to stay sharp on this one. There's just way too much kind of going on. Another negative for me is that I understood this book was written in the late 1800s. There's a lot of racial slurs that are used in this book, almost to a very uncomfortable degree. Now, I know I talked about in other books where keeping the history of a book is great, obviously, if it enhances it or if it's to learn from. In this one, I feel like it was distracting. I feel like this one, I'm not saying necessarily edit it, but I feel like there are certain times where it's not needed. It's not needed to have these racial slurs or to have these words. I don't care for that. It really makes it hard to read and kind of takes me out of the story. I do imagine this would be hard for other readers, especially in today's society, to read just because of everything that he talks about, and he's very blatantly racist when he says certain things. I'll also admit that during this I had to use the Spark Notes and the Wikipedia page to kind of keep following along, because again, this is such a wordy book. If you are going to use Wikipedia, just notate that they will condense like whole pages into a sentence, and you're not really getting the full gist of what Joseph Conrad is saying. Overall, with its flaws, I still think it's a good story. So why is the story still taught? And I think it's based really amongst the human factor and just trying to get that portrayal of just because someone is different looking than you or different sounding than you, may have different customs or traditions. We're all human, we're all people, and your traditions might look really strange to someone else, and someone else's traditions and customs and beliefs might be very, very off from your own. But that doesn't make us any less human. We're all one human race, we're all one population. So I think that was really great, and I think especially in that time period, again, very profound for the late 1800s. In today's society, I think it's really interesting because we look at these white settlers from the 1800s and we think of them as barbaric and inhuman and immoral with all the acts, manifest destiny, colonization. And it's funny how in this story, Joseph Conrad mentions the Romans 1900 years earlier and how barbaric they were. I think it's interesting, especially reading it today, to see in the future, a few hundred years from now, how people will look back and view us. So all in all, it is a good story, but do I recommend it? I don't know. It's really complicated. I know that I did some research from scholars and they did say that this book was purposely written to be very hard to get through. I think it's unnecessary. I think it's an unnecessary complication to this story. So do I suggest reading it? But look for my movie review and you'll see there if you should just watch it instead, or just watch this series. But anyways, that's my thoughts on the book. I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you later, and as always, stay lit.